type of students, those who do not have political science at the graduation level, and they are taking political science and they are interested to learn about political science. So there the responsibility of the teacher becomes more. So I find teaching the IGNOU students more challenging than the students whom we teach in conventional or in physical mode. Suppose I am in GM University, I am teaching students of PG in our university. That normal practice is that they have graduation at the honors at the graduation level, and we find less difficulty in make them understand what we want to convey. So as far as possible, I will try to be lucid, simplified भावरे मु मोर फैक्ट को प्रेजेंट करबा को चाहिनी. That is one point. Second point होची normally physical mode रे when we take classes आमे ए पोर्शन टाको we get 6 months of time. Semester system में 6 months of time. 6 months of time is in every week we may have 3 to 4 classes. तेणु इमेजिन करो एतिकी पोर्शन पढ़ेबा पाई सप्ताह रे 4टा क्लास हेले 6 मास बा 5 मास रे how many classes you will be getting or how many classes the teacher gets. Now here I am expected to cover the whole syllabus within 3 slots. So challenge become more. So there are two challenges. Some of you may not have political science, and with less time, how to complete the schedule in a way that you can write your paper, or I will be able to make yourself get the essence of the paper at least. So the paper is social political thought of modern India. Now when we say here, there are two words are important. One is social, other one is modern. Why? Normally it is said political thought of India, normally, or political thought of Greece. जो माने वेस्टर्न पॉलिटिकल थॉट ग्रेजुएशन में पढ़ी थिबो पॉलिटिकल थॉट ग्रीक पॉलिटिकल थॉट बा मिडिएवल पॉलिटिकल थॉट हियर वी आर यूजिंग द वर्ड सोशल पॉलिटिकल थॉट ऑफ मॉडर्न इंडिया. नाउ व्हाई द वर्ड सोशल इज यूज्ड एंड व्हाई देयर इज अ वर्ड कॉल्ड मॉडर्न. ए दुईटा वर्ड रो जदी इफ यू गेट द मीनिंग ताहले सिलेबसटा तुमको धरिबा को इजियर हबो. माय पर्पस इन द फर्स्ट क्लास विल बी टू गिव यू अ स्केच. गोटे स्केच दबा को मु चेष्टा करूची सो दैट ए जो सिलेबसटा अछि रेस्ट 3 क्लासेस रे इट विल बी इजियर ऑन योर पार्ट टू ग्रास्प द होल लॉट. नाउ एटा को सोशल एथि पई कोहा जाउची ए मॉडर्न पॉलिटिकल थॉट व्हिच वाज इवॉल्वड अराउंड द ड्यूरिंग आवर फ्रीडम स्ट्रगल. It was developed in the context of colonization when the British people came to India, and lot of changes were taking place in India. Economic changes economic changes, cultural changes, social changes were going on. During that time, political thought of India of modern period got its say. That's why it was called social and political thought. नॉर्मली पॉलिटिकल थॉट कहले आमे बुझू इंडिविजुअल विषय रे पढिबा स्टेट विषय रे पढिबा किंतु एई जगह रे आउ गोटे वर्ड अटैच अछि तार अर्थ होछि सोशल. दैट मींस व्हेन यू गो थ्रू द पॉलिटिकल थॉट ऑफ मॉडर्न इंडिया you have to take into account the context, the social context. caste equation कौन थिला, इकोनॉमी टा कौन थिला, कल्चर कौन थिला, and how all these factors have shaped the relationship between the individual and state, which is the essence of political thought of any political system. That's why the word social is used. Western context रे गले देखिबो western political thought social thought बोली लेखा जाए नाही. India context रे social बोली लेखा जाउची कारण modern Indian political thought was developed in a period when India was under colonization. Then why it is called modern? Another word is there, modern. Now modern political thought it is called because earlier we had a political thought which is called classical Indian political thought. This is called modern political thought. Now we will be discussing in course of time whether classical political thought which existed prior to modern political thought was something else or both of them were same. Now आमे normally political thought, modern Indian political thought is a synthesis. Synthesis माने बुझुछ mixture. Modern Indian political thought को गोटिए लाइन रे जदि modern Indian social political thought को जदि आमे गोटिए लाइन रे express करिबा ताले आमे कहि परिबा it is a synthesis of, synthesis माने बुझुछ mixture, synthesis of old idea which existed in India and new idea which were spread by the British. That's why it is called modern political thought. A jinsada mone rakho that modern Indian political thought developed in the context of colonization. It represents a blending, a mixture of old values with that of new values. ताहले प्रथम क्वेश्चन उठुची what existed prior to modern political thought. Now political thought आमे जेते बेले कहूछु, we always represent the relationship between the individual and state. Now classical Hindu political thought, which was interpreted, which was explained by Manu and Kautilya, this type of thought was different from Western political thought. I am now diverting your attention to Western political thought to some extent. आमे जानी रखिबा प्रथमे Western political thought रू Indian political thought किपरि भिन्न एवं Indian political classical political thought पुनी modern political thought रू किपरि भिन्न. Now जेतेबेले आमे political thought कहूछु, when we say that normally we refer to Western political thought. Now Western political thought was developed since the Greek period. So it covers the Greek period, the Roman period, the medieval period and modern period. During that period, political thinkers developed the relationship between the individual and state in a systematic manner. And it was systematic, it was rational and it was secular. Why it is called systematic? Because it has been repeatedly revised. So over a period of time of its revision, it had become systematic. Why it is secular? Because the influence of religion in Western political thought was less. Only during the medieval period, the influence of Christianity was there. Otherwise, Western political thought is considered to be a secular political thought. It was a rational thought, it was an analytical thought. এই ওয়েস্টার্ন পলিটিক্যাল থট যেতবেলে আমি কহুଛୁ সেতবেলে আমি গ্রিক পিরিয়ড কভর করুଛୁ, রোমান পিরিয়ড কভর করুଛୁ, মিডিয়াভাল পিরিয়ড কভর করুଛୁ, মডর্ন পিরিয়ড করুଛୁ. ଯୋଉମାନଙ୍କର ଗ୍ରାଜୁଏସନ ଟାଇମ ରେ ଯୋଉମାନଙ୍କର ଅଛି ପଲିଟିକାଲ থট ଅଛି, ଯୋଉମାନଙ୍କର ପେପର ଅଛି ସେମାନେ ଜାଣି ପାରିବେ. ୱେଟ୍ ଅ ମିନିଟ୍. जो मानकर वेस्टर्न पॉलिटिकल थॉट थिबो से माने जानि परिबे जे आमे ग्रीक पीरियड रे प्लाटो अरिस्टोटल पढू, देन मीडियावल पीरियड रे सिसारो पढू, सॉरी रोमन पीरियड रे सिसारो पढू, मीडियावल पीरियड रे ऑगस्टाइन पढू, मॉडर्न पीरियड रे हॉब्स, लॉक, रूसो, बेंथम, मिल समस्त को पढू. नाउ ए पॉलिटिकल थिंकर माने दे डिफाइन थ्री थिंग्स. वन, दे टॉक अबाउट ह्यूमन नेचर, they talk about social organization, they talk about nature of state. तेणु political thought west रे हो बा भारत रे हो एमाने तीनिटा जिनिस को डील करंती. आ जेतेबेले ए तीनिटा जिनिस को डील करंती याकू कहा जाय गोटिए सिस्टमैटिक पॉलिटिकल थॉट. तेणु प्रथम एलिमेंट रुहे ह्यूमन नेचर. ह्यूमन नेचर बैड हे पारे, समस्त कहा को पॉलिटिकल थिंकर पाई बैड हे पारे, को पॉलिटिकल थिंकर पाई सोशल हे पारे. तो डिफरेंट इंटरप्रिटेशन रही. सोशल ऑर्गेनाइजेशन टा किपरि हेबो एवं स्टेट रो नेचर टा कोन हेबो, एई तीनटा एलिमेंट को नेकरी थॉट प्रोसेस टा वेस्टर्न कंट्रीज रे डेवलप हैला. नाउ जेतेबेले एई तीनटा नेकरी से माने दे ट्राई टू डेवलप ड्यूरिंग दैट पीरियड, दे टॉक अबाउट पॉलिटिकल वैल्यूज लाइक राइट, लिबर्टी, इक्वालिटी, justice and political obligation. These are the essential political values about which political thinkers talk. Now after that जदि तुम माने देखिबो वेस्टर्न पॉलिटिकल थॉट, मु बर्तन वेस्टर्न और इंडियन रो डिफरेंस टा कहूची. वेस्टर्न पॉलिटिकल थॉट रे देखिबो ग्रीक पीरियड थारो मॉडर्न पीरियड पर्यंत चारिटा प्रकार चिंताधारार लोक अछंती। प्लाटो अरिस्टोटल ग्रीक पीरियड को जीवो ताको कहा जाए ऑर्गेनिक थिंकिंग, ऑर्गेनिक ट्रेडिशन। ऑर्गेनिक ट्रेडिशन अर्थ इंडिविजुअल ठारू सिटी स्टेट इज मोर इंपोर्टेंट, ताको कहा जाए ऑर्गेनिक ट्रेडिशन। एई कांसेप्ट रे राइट लिबर्टी को प्राधान्य, दे डोंट गिव इंपोर्टेंस टू राइट लिबर्टी इक्वालिटी जस्टिस। देन केम द मॉडर्न पीरियड। मॉडर्न पीरियड रो पायनियर होची मैकियावेली, बट इट took a definite shape in the hands of Hobbes। सेई पीरियड रे कहा जाउची मेकानिस्टिक ट्रेडिशन। एई पीरियड रे इंडिविजुअल को बेसी प्राधान्य बा इंपोर्टेंस दिया जायची देन द स्टेट। तेणु एई ट्रेडिशन रे राइट लिबर्टी कथा बेसी कहा जाए। देन केम आइडियलिस्टिक ट्रेडिशन। 18th सेंचुरी रे आइडियलिस्टिक ट्रेडिशन आसिला। ए आइडियलिस्टिक ट्रेडिशन ने अगेन स्टेट को ग्लोरीफाई करा गला। देन इन द हैंड ऑफ मार्क्स यू कम अक्रॉस anarchist tradition where society was given importance। तेणु तुमन को जेतेबेले when somebody puts a question what do you mean by political thought, political thought is an equation between individual and state। Definition between individual state revolves around human nature, social organization and the nature of the state। It deals with political values like right, liberty, equality, justice। And while defining individual state relationship, Western political thinker can be categorized into 4 units, that is organic tradition, then mechanistic tradition, idealistic tradition and anarchist tradition। Overall in one word with ame kahi pariba Western political thought। That's why I say these are rational, analytical and secular। It has been revised जेहेतु चारिटा ट्रेडिशन देखुच, it has been revised repeatedly। प्रथम ऑर्गेनिक ट्रेडिशन कुहा गला, तापरे मेकानिस्टिक कुहा गला, तापरे आइडियलिस्टिक कुहा गला, तापरे एनार्किस्ट ट्रेडिशन कुहा गला। So over a period of time it has developed a systematic line of thinking and it provides alternative। को लाइन तमे फॉलो करिबा को चाहूछ, you have been given 4 variation। Now come to India। When Indian political thought, let us now, your paper begins here। Now I have given you an introduction about the political thought। Now I am coming to Indian political thought, then I will be moving to modern Indian political thought। What is the difference between Indian political thought, classical Indian political thought and modern Indian political thought? In case of classical political thought, the 3 things existed। What are those? Human nature, social organization and the state। Now as I told you, in case of the West there is a repeated revision। Why repeated revision could take place in Western society? The reason is that in Western society there was a conciliar movement। In Europe people challenged the Pope। रिलीजन को पोप को चैलेंज कले मीडियावेल पीरियड रे, ताको कहा जाए कंसिलियर मूवमेंट। Subsequently in Europe there was a Renaissance movement where priority was given to individual। तमे केतेबेले रिवाइज करिवो, केतेबेले रेजिस्ट करिवो, केतेबेले नुवा चिंताधारा समाज को आसीबो, जेतेबेले मनुष्यर चिंता शक्ति डेवलप करे। तेणु यूरोप रे because of the Renaissance movement and conciliar movement, people were learned to give priority to themselves or to their own thought process। तेणु वेस्टर्न थिंकिंग प्रोसेस रे रिपीटेड रिविजन हैला। द्वितीय कथा हैला वेस्टर्न सोसाइटी रे दे आर यूज्ड टू बी एब्सोल्यूट मोनार्क। हॉब्स रो चिंताधारा पढिबो कुहा जाउची लेवियाथान वाज एन एब्सोल्यूट मोनार्क। जेतेबेले राजाटा को स्वेच्छाचारी कर दिया जाए तार अर्थ हैला लोक माननकु अप्रेस करी रखा जाउची। इफ पीपल रिमेन अंडर अप्रेस्ड कंडीशन there was a possibility, there may be a possibility of resistance। तेणु रेजिस्टेंस हेले नूतन चिंताधारा बाहरिबो। तृतीय जिंस हैला इंडस्ट्रियल रिवोल्यूशन हैला। इंडस्ट्रियल रिवोल्यूशन हवा फल रे एजुकेशन स्प्रेड कला। एजुकेशन स्प्रेड करिबा फल रे लोकंकर चिंता शक्तिर ग्रोथ हैला। तेणु वेस्टर्न सोसाइटी रे थॉट प्रोसेस ता रिपीटेडली रिवाइज्ड हैला। कमिंग टू इंडिया, आमे जेतेबेले इंडिया को आसीबा आमे देखिबा सेपरी रिविजन भारत रे हेई नाही। एमिति कि ऑर्गेनिक आसिला, मेकानिस्टिक आसुची। ऑर्गेनिक ट्रेडिशन माने यू आर गिविंग प्रायोरिटी टू सिटी स्टेट, नॉट टू इंडिविजुअल। मॉडर्न जुग यूरोप रे आरंभ होला, यू आर गिविंग प्रायोरिटी टू इंडिविजुअल, परिवर्तन हैला, दैट मीन्स फोकस वाज अपॉन राइट एंड लिबर्टी. देन आइडियलिस्टिक टाइम केम when Rousseau gave priority to Rousseau and Hegel gave priority to state. Then came 19th century, Karl Marx asile, se priority dele neither to individual nor to state, he gave priority to the society. এই যে পরিবর্তন হয়েছে চিন্তাধারারে, এইটা কাহিকি হেলা, প্রথম থর ডিফরেন্ট রিজনস আর দেয়ার. नंबर 1 রিজন দ্যাট ওয়েস্টার্ন সোসাইটি রে যে চেঞ্জেস হয়েছে ভারতরে হেই নাই, তার রিজন হচ্ছে ইন ওয়েস্টার্ন সোসাইটি দেয়ার ওয়াজ কনসিলিয়ার মুভমেন্ট, there was Renaissance movement, there was absolutism through monarchy, there was industrial revolution, there was spread of education, and there was existence of civil society. Western society रे thinking रे जॉन लॉक ठारू आरंभ करिकरी 20th century पर्यंत different political thinker civil society कथा कहिसंती. Civil society means there is a space in the society where individual muster courage to articulate different type of thought process. भारत रे एसबु जिनस अछि कि नाही, जदि नाही obviously that could be the reason for which भारत रे ए चेंजेस नाही. मोर कहिबार अर्थ होची क्लासिकल पॉलिटिकल थॉट रे जहा अछि तमे देखिबो मॉडर्न पॉलिटिकल थॉट ता माने मनु ठारू आरंभ करिकरी जयप्रकाश नारायण पर्यंत जहा को कि आमे लास्ट पर्सन इन क्लासिक सोशल पॉलिटिकल थिंक थॉट प्रोसेस रे कहूचु, देयर इज ए कंटिन्यूटी, एते वेरिएशन नाही, ऑर्गेनिक मेकानिस्टिक आइडियलिस्टिक एते की वेरिएशन नाही. ताहले कोन अछि जदि वेरिएशन नाही काहे की हे नाही, अब भारतर थॉट प्रोसेस रे कोन अछि जेहेतु कंटिन्यूटी कथा कहूची आमे जानि रखिबा जे मॉडर्न इंडियन पॉलिटिकल थॉट आसीबा पूर्वरु भारत रे कोन थिला एवं मॉडर्न इंडियन पॉलिटिकल थॉट ताकू किपरे भाबरे डिफरेंट प्रकार रे ताकू एक्सप्रेस कला. तेणु जदि आमे क्लासिकल पॉलिटिकल थॉट को जिबा सेई तीनिटा कंपोनेंट रहिछि. व्हाट आर द थ्री कंपोनेंट्स? दैट इज द ह्यूमन नेचर, सोशल ऑर्गेनाइजेशन एंड नेचर ऑफ स्टेट. नाउ स्टेट कहले यूरोप रे जो हिसाब रे स्टेट ताकू देखुचो मेकियावेली पीरियड थारू तमे देखिबो स्टेट रो अर्थ होची टेरिटरी, पॉपुलेशन, गवर्नमेंट एंड सोवरेनिटी. concept of state came. Subsequently, concept of nation state emerged. भारत रे हुए तो मनु कौटिल्य टाइम रे एई प्रकार स्टेट नथिला कारण concept of sovereignty was not there during that period also. ताहले what were the components of classical political thought? Number 1, human nature. What was human nature? According to Plato and Aristotle, human nature was benign. Objective was to get good life. Then Machiavelli time रे objective was one own growth, निजर growth हवा कथा को आगला. Man was portrayed as a selfish being. भारत को आसीबो from Manu down to Jayaprakash Narayan, every political thinker speaks in one word that man is moral by nature. What is the definition of morality? The objective of every individual was realization of one's own inner self. निजर ग्रोथ, निजर इनर बीइंग रो ग्रोथ करिबा होची मनुष्यर लक्ष्य बोलिकी भारतर पॉलिटिकल थिंकर माने आरंभ कले मनु एवं कौटिल्य ठारू दैट द ऑब्जेक्टिव ऑफ एवरी इंडिविजुअल इज इनर ग्रोथ. एई जिनिसरा तमे नेहरू रे देखिबो, पटेल रे देखिबो, जयप्रकाश नारायण देखिबो, अंबेडकर देखिबो, टू सम एक्सटेंट everybody talks in that way. When you say that the objective of individual is inner growth, that means man is not selfish. जोटा हॉब्स कहूची, जोटा लॉक कहूची, man is selfish by nature. Machiavelli कहला man can kill his father for the sake of patrimony. Modern Indian political thinkers से सब रे विश्वास करंती नहीं. By and large, I am using the word by and large because there might be some variation. By and large, political thinkers believe that in India, the aim of individual is inner growth. So man is not selfish. Man is divine by nature. Then coming to society, what is the nature of the society? If you go to the early Vedic period, it was caste based. When we use the word caste, obviously a negative word, negative interpretation comes to our mind, because caste कहले we refer to Dalit exploitation, we refer to caste violence. So we believe that caste is always bad by nature. But you must remember that caste is a component of arranging the society. Every society needs a medium for its arrangement. Why that arrangement is called needed? याकु sociology रे कुहा जाए stratification. Every society requires stratification for the equitable distribution of social resources. Whether it is America or India or China or Japan, we need a stratification system, and that stratification system is dependent upon the value of that society, norm of that society. So our stratification system is different from that of UK, US or China, etc. So initially caste was introduced as a component to arrange the society. So it was called that there would be four components: Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya and Sudra, and these groups would be created on the basis of functional specialization. Heredity बोली कौन जिनस नथिला. If I know the ritual, I would be Brahmin. If I know the warfare, I would be the Kshatriya. If I don't know anything, then I would be Sudra to serve the other three community. So it was called functional specialization. So initially, during the period of classical Hindu political thinking, it was believed society would be divided into four groups on the basis of function, and the objective of this functional distribution was that if I know the ritual, I am fit for that job, I should be called Brahmin. If I don't know, I should search for another place where I would be able to excel. That is the purpose. So society was called plural during that period. Third thing was nature of the state. According to classical political thinker, nature of state was limited. You must have heard about Asoka, Kharaval. So tame jetebele goppo poducho that king was used to make war, but it was not unlimited. King was never given absolute power in Indian society. Manu and Kautilya they circulated the Saptanga theory. King must be assisted by 7 organs. When the people would give tax to the king, when the king would be able to protect the life of the people, otherwise the people were given the right to resist also. So my point is that Manu and Kautilya told king was guided by two nitis, Danda niti and Dharma niti. Dharma means the function of the king was to maintain the social plurality. Brahmin must do the job of Brahmin. Kshatriya must do the job of the Kshatriya. This is called social plurality. So the job of the king was not to give punishment or not to enjoy his life or queen, look after the queen. The function of the king was to maintain the social order or social plurality. In case of its deviation, the king was entitled to give danda. So the twin principle on the basis of which Indian political thought was based, the nature of state craft was based, was called Dharma Niti and Danda Niti. So Indian political thought, classical Indian political thought was also quite systematic. It talked about human nature, which was moral. It talked about society, which was plural. It talked about the nature of the state, which was limited. এই তিনটা component, please keep it writing. লেখিকি রাখো. And you try to examine in subsequent period when you read Gandhi, when you will be reading Nehru or Ambedkar or any other thinker, try to examine or analyze whether the three components exist or not. Because this is the cardinal essence of Indian political thought. Human nature is moral. They never say man is selfish by nature. Society is plural. And state is, I know there must be some question in your mind that madam is talking about plural society. In modern days, we do not believe in caste system. That question we will be dealing with in subsequent period. Now, society must be plural and state must be limited by nature. Okay, these are the three basic principles. Now, in course of time, the system started declining. Indian political system started declining in late Vedic period when the ritualism were introduced, idol worship was introduced, and in the name of idol worship, Brahmins started dominating, and the caste system became rigid, and caste system became hereditary. Whether I know rituals or not, if I am a son of a Brahmin, I would be Brahmin. So caste system became five, that is Brahmin, divided into five components: Brahmin, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, Sudra, and the Dalit. So during late Vedic period, the concept of Dalit came into existence, for whom Ambedkar launched the struggle for social justice, a pioneer and essential component of Indian political thought. So, in the early classical political thought, concept of Dalit was not there. Then another decline took place when the Islamic invasion took place. Now, as I told you, Indian society was quite plural, and king was guided by Sabha and Samiti. King was guided by the decentralization of power. There were Saptanga theory. All these things started declining when the Mughal came into India and the centralization began. So the two things which were responsible for the decline of classical political thought, changes in classical political thought, number one was advent of your Muslim people and decline of classical Hindu culture due to late Vedic spiritual idol worship or other social taboos. These were the two factors which led to decline of Indian political thought. During the period, Buddhism tried to change the society, Jain tried to change the society, but they did not succeed. Now we are coming gradually to modern Indian political thought. Now remember those three things. That is, man is benign by nature, society was considered to be plural, and state was limited. These three components were affected due to the use of religion in the late Vedic period and due to the invasion of Islamic people, which led to centralization of the society. Then came the modern period. Modern period of social political thought, as I told you, it was developed in the background of colonization. Modern political thought began in the background of colonization. Why did colonization start? Colonization means India was kept under colony. Why India was kept under colony? In Europe there was Renaissance. Renaissance means industrialization. Industrialization required market, and that market was European market was not sufficient. During that period, Vasco da Gama and Columbus made voyages, discoveries. India was discovered, and India was made colony gradually, because at that time Mughal Empire was declining. Southern part of India was a divided house, so it helped the British people to make India its colony. Now, when British people came, they did not come alone. They came with their mindset, their attitude. At the time, British people were exposed to Renaissance. British people were modernized. They were cultured. They were exposed to industrialization. They were exposed to liberal values like right, liberty, equality, justice, जोटा प्रथम थर पई कहूची वर्तमान जाए भारत रे से गुडा को किछि नथिला मन रखो पिला माने वर्तमान जाए भारत रे क्लासिकल पॉलिटिकल थॉट माने आमे बुझुचु जे हायरार्किकल सोसाइटी इक्वालिटी नथिला प्राइवेट प्रॉपर्टी वाज नॉट गिवन प्रायोरिटी राइट लिबर्टी उपरे सेतेटा फोकस नथिला concept of state in modern sense of the term was not there. थॉट कहले इंडिविजुअल स्टेट रिलेशनशिप ता ट्रू सेंस रे डेवलप कला when the modernization of Indian society began. But say तीनिटा essential value को जेमते मु क्लास रे सब बेले कोए बर्थडे करूचो, you are having a cake. Now when you are having a cake, there is a base. Now on that base, you are putting icing to design your cake. Just like that, we have a base. So don't forget that base. That base is man is not selfish. Moral कहिबो कि न कहिबो वर्तमान ग्लोबलाइज्ड एरा रे डिफरेंट, बट मैन इज नॉट सेल्फिश. द्वितीय, सोसाइटी नीड्स टू बी प्लुराल. तृतीय रे स्टेट रो दायराटा लिमिटेड रहिबो. एई तीनिटा बेस को रहिकिरी आमर मॉडर्न पॉलिटिकल थिंकर माने जो माने कॉलोनाइजेशन पीरियड रे बाहरिले से माने दे ट्राई टू ऐड समथिंग. काहे की ऐड कले? जोटा मु कहिली कॉलोनाइजेशन रे भारत को केवल ब्रिटिश माने आसी नाहंती. दे केम विथ देयर एटीट्यूड. They were modern people. I am not exaggerating them because they came with more right. They were acquainted to concept of right. जोटा fundamental right भारत रे तमे देखुचो. They were acquainted to equality between men and women. They were not exposed to caste exploitation. भारत रे सेता caste exploitation आरंभ होई सारितलानी. They knew the parity of status. They knew the concept of private property, which is an essential component of political thought. सेही विषय से माने एकस्टम थिले. तेणु ए सब माइंडसेट रे ए सब चिंताधारा नै से माने भारत रे शासन करिला को आरंभ कले. Now during that period, India was not developed as a state. तो बरंबार कहूची थॉट माने relationship between individual and state. In modern sense of the term, भारत रे स्टेट नथिला. टेस्ट मॉडर्न सेंस रे स्टेट अर्थ टेरिटरी, पॉपुलेशन, गवर्नमेंट एंड सोवरेनिटी. एई कांसेप्टटा भारत रे एई चारटा एलिमेंट लेकिरी एईटा एमर्ज कला ड्यूरिंग फ्रीडम स्ट्रगल. फ्रीडम स्ट्रगल which began 1857 सिपोय म्यूटिनी ठारू 1947. ए 19 years 90 वर्षर इतिहास भितरे इंडिया emerged as a nation state. So during that period, what the British contributed and how modernization led to growth of modern Indian political thought. Now when the British came, they came to India for the purpose of colonizing us. They did not come to modernize us. They came to colonize us. They came to exploit us. Now for the purpose of exploitation, they modernized us. And to modernize, they introduced press, they introduced English education, they introduced legal system, they introduced railway network and postal communication. They reformed, they brought land reform. Land reform, royalty system introduced. It led to birth of concept of private property in India. They introduced uniform legal system that led to birth of the idea of equality in India. Bharat रे जो नथिला, concept of equality was started gaining ground. Concept of private property विषय रे लोक माने कथा हेले जानिबा को पाइले. Concept of right विषय रे समाने जानिबा को चाहेले. तेनु ए जो जिंस कम्युनिकेशन इंट्रोड्यूस हला, railway network introduced hela, legal system introduced hela. All these things were introduced for the convenience of the British people, no doubt. But side by side, it allowed the Indian people to know about the concept of right, liberty, equality, justice, and property, which were the essential component of political thought. एटा नहेले political thought articulate करिवाटा असंभव. तेणु ए जिनिस मॉडर्नाइजेशन प्रोसेस रे we started learning. Second जिनिस they introduced essential parameter of state, that is the designed bureaucracy, the designed police, which were needed to run any modern state. They were not there earlier. Now again they annexed India. In order to colonize, they also started conquering state after state. So on the one hand, they started, East India Company started annexing, leading to unification of the country. They introduced press, communication, postal network, etc., which further unified the country. Third, they introduced administrative measures. भारत को शासन करने को 1857 परठारु भारतर शासन भार पार्लियामेंट को चलीगला को पार्लियामेंट ब्रिटिश पार्लियामेंट को चलीगला प्रायर टू तुम जब पूरा स्पेल को देखिबो 1600 रु 1600 ठारू 1857 पर्यंत इंडिया वाज गवर्न बाय ईस्ट इंडिया कंपनी 1857 टू 1947 पर्यंत इंडिया वाज गवर्न बाय ब्रिटिश पार्लियामेंट तेणु 1857 परठारु सिपाही म्यूटिनी परठारु when India was run by the British Parliament, administrative measures were introduced. Concept of provincial legislative assemblies were introduced. Election was introduced. All these were essential political component to develop a political thought. Then federalism, judiciary, all these were introduced. So, number one, annexation. Number two, measures like railway, legal framework, etc., etc. Number three, administrative measures like introducing parliament, election, judiciary, etc. तेणु तीनटा भागरे भाग कर दिया गला. All this led to unification of India. Now, don't think that India, modern Indian political thought began or it was the sole contribution of the British for the growth of modern Indian political thought. If you think in that line, but karan bartaman porjonto I have been telling you that thing only, what the British did and how it contributed to the growth of modern Indian political thought. We would be wrong if we think in that way, that the British led or British put the plinth of modern Indian political thought. Partially it could be true. Partially, British might be responsible to some extent, or British might have helped us in modernizing Indian political thought, modernizing the political thought process of India, which existed earlier, because they introduced concept of right, liberty, equality, justice. They introduced concept of private property, but it would be wrong to say that Indian, they have not done anything. When the British, the second phase, this is the first part. When the British, after 1857, there was a period called lull, L-U-L-L, lull माने सुप्त, जो period रे आमे टिके dull ही जाओ. से सुप्तावस्था कहा जाए 1857 टू 1900 बा 1885 कहि पारो 1885 बारंबार कहा जाउछि कारण दिस इज द बर्थ पीरियड ऑफ इंडियन नेशनल कांग्रेस. दिस इज अ फेज ऑफ लल. एई पीरियड रे सोशल रिफॉर्मर played a crucial role. They try to raise voice against social inequality, because late Vedic period re caste system became so important, so prominent, that during that period they fought. If you come across Ram Mohan Roy, Dayananda Saraswati, Phule, esu manka bisar jodi padibo, then they talked about social equality, upliftment of women, upliftment of downtrodden. So they try to bridge the cleavages. And during that period, there is an important thinker, Bankim Chandra, who told about Bande Mataram. ଯେତେବେଳେ କି ଆମେ nationality କଥା ଜାଣି ନଥିଲୁ, କାହିଁକି ବାରମ୍ବାର nationality କଥା କହୁଛି, modern Indian political thought, it is associated with birth of Indian nationalism, birth of Indian state. ଏଇ କଥାଟା social reformer ବୋଲି ଧରୁଛୁ ଆମେ ବଙ୍କିମ ଚନ୍ଦ୍ରଙ୍କୁ. ସେଇ ପିରିୟଡ ରେ ସେ ବନ୍ଦେ ମାତରମ୍ ଯେତେବେଳେ କହିଲେ, concept of nationalism started gaining ground, which was not there in classical political thought. Nationalism नथिला. Then social reformer, they try to bridge the gap which existed in the society. कारण society रे जेते दिन पर्यंत gap थिबो, कौन सोसाइटी मॉडर्न हो पारिबो नाही. So the contribution of social reformers lay in the fact they try to bridge the gaps, they try to unify the society, and at that time your Indian National Congress was formed as safety valve. Indian National Congress was developed by the British as a safety valve to help the Indian to ventilate the grievance. So what they did, we will discuss it later on. Why I said that contribution of British could be addressed as partially true. There is another important element which led to birth of modernization of Indian political thought. That is called revivalism. When the British remained in India, as their purpose was exploitation, as their purpose was colonization, so they adopted many harsh measures also. And during that period, there was a revivalist tendency that go back to our past. Dayananda Saraswati told, go back to Veda. Remember the earlier element that man is benign by nature, society should be plural, and the state should be limited. When Dayananda Saraswati told, go back to Veda, he told about revival of those essential values of Indian political thought. In a subsequent period, and Tilak, who was part of Indian National Congress extremist wing, he told that Swaraj is my birthright, I must have it. Or Vivekananda, or your Vivekananda or Aurobindo, they were die-hard revivalists. They wanted to revive the old values. Now, when ଯେତେବେଳେ ତମେ ଇଣ୍ଡିଆର ମଡର୍ଣ୍ଣାଇଜେସନ ହେଇଛି, ତମେ ଡିଫରେଣ୍ଟ ଟାଇପର ଚିନ୍ତାଧାରା ଦେଖୁଛ. 1885 ରେ ଇଣ୍ଡିଆନ ନ୍ୟାସନାଲ କଂଗ୍ରେସ was established. Early part ରେ ଯେତେବେଳେ ଇଣ୍ଡିଆନ ନ୍ୟାସନାଲ କଂଗ୍ରେସ was established, the groups was called moderate wing. ତମର ମଡର୍ନ ଇଣ୍ଡିଆନ ପଲିଟିକାଲ ଥଟ୍ ରେ ଦେଖିବ, ସେଟା ଗୋଟେ ଚ୍ୟାପ୍ଟର ଅଛି, କଣ୍ଟ୍ରିବ୍ୟୁସନ ଅଫ modern political moderate wings. These moderate wing, they want, what was their purpose? Their purpose was that they used to say British should remain in India because they have modernized us. They should remain in India, but they should allow more number of Indians to be associated in the process of administration. So their objective was very limited. But what was their contribution? They made the people aware of their rights, that the British may remain because they have introduced so many positive things, but Indians should be associated. That is the moderates, the first phase of Indian National Congress. Then came the second phase. Second phase was the phase of revivalism. It was led by Tilak. Tilak said that Tilak tried to emulate Dayananda Saraswati, who emphasized upon inner domain. They said that British might be superior in outer domain. Outer domain no artha hochi material growth. Inner domain hochi inner growth. They used to say that British might be, or Western civilization might be superior so far as external domain was concerned, but in terms of inner domain, Indians were superior. Indians were no less. So go back to Veda. So these revivalist people wanted that Indian political thought must stick to its old value, that is, man was benign by nature, society need to be plural, state must be limited by character. So the first phase was imitation, those who try to imitate the Western values, right, liberty, equality, justice, जोटा कि हमारे Indian Constitution रे भी देखुचो. Second phase, revivalist, they wanted to revive the classical values, and the third phase belonged to Gandhi. Emergence of Gandhi was a vital point in the growth of Indian political thought. तमे जदि whole political thought process रे कहबो who was a complete thinker, then Gandhi would be the complete thinker. काहे कि जेतेबेले political thinking कहूचो, you must talk about human nature, you must talk about society, you must talk about the state. भारत रे जेते political thinker देखुचो, they believe that their first target was independence of the country. They never thought, they never used to write in terms of these three parameters. Gandhi might be the only sole person who, while fighting against the British, talked about human nature, social organization, and talked about nature of state. His objective was Ram Rajya when he was fighting against the British also. So when Gandhi came, he unified people. He tried to fight against the caste system. And that was a new component added. The concept of equality, concept of social justice was added when Gandhi arrived in India, and nationalism became more broad-based during the after the arrival of Gandhi. Now, subsequently, again, within the Congress, you will find when the Gandhian struggle was suppressed, Gandhian struggle was not so successful after the civil disobedience movement. During that period, we come across people like Nehru and Patel who wanted to enter into the assembly. They fought election in 1935 election, 1937 election, because by then British had introduced election in India, though the election system was communal. So they started entering into the legislative assembly, into the parliament assembly, and their objective was it would help in the liberation of the country. So during all this period, Indian political thought had started evolving gradually. So my point of telling you all these things is that, so during the whole period, we have come across that the British introduced annexation, British introduced modernization in terms of so many things, British introduced administrative measures. But besides that, what the Indian did, because our point is not to go through what the British have done. Our focus is on what the Indian political thinkers have done to develop the modern Indian political thought. It is called modern. It is not the same classical political thought, because classical political thought has been added with Western liberal values. ବର୍ତ୍ତମାନ जो ପଲିଟିକାଲ थॉट ତମେ ପଢିବ ସେଇ କ୍ଲାସିକାଲ थॉट ର ତିନି କମ୍ପୋନେଣ୍ଟ କୁ ଇଣ୍ଟାକ୍ଟ ରଖିକିରି that man is moral, society should be plural, state should be limited by nature. You come across how, what should be the nature of constitution, what should be the right of individual, whether there should be right or liberty, freedom of the people or not, what should be the industrialization, all these things, what should be the role of the state, whether the state should be minimal or maximal, what Gandhi had told, what Nehru have told, they have started articulating because they were inspired by the Western line of thinking. Because in classical political thought, we did not have the modern state. We did not have the modern bureaucracy. We did not have the constitutionalism, the concept of nationalism. All these things came to India during the period of colonization. Now, so how the Indian political thought can be divided? Indian political thought can be divided into three parts. The first part was called mere imitation, which was the period of moderates. ତେଣୁ ଏଇ ପିରିୟଡରେ ଦେଖିବ they were simply inspired by the contribution of the Britishers, which they have done during the process of colonization. So it was called a period of imitation. Then second period is called synthesis. Now a second period is revivalism, imitation, then revivalism. During this revivalism, we come across other political thinkers like Dayananda Saraswati, Tilak, or Golwalkar, or Savarkar, because a period re Hindu political thought had also started emerging. So revivalism ଯେତେବେଳେ ଆମେ କହୁଛୁ, we are coming across not only Tilak or Dayananda Saraswati, we are coming across Golwalkar and Savarkar also, who talked about Hindu political thought. Hindu political, they talked about absolute state, Akhand Bharat, and against the rise of Hindu political thought, Against the rise of Hindu political thought, we come across the rise of Islamic political thought. तेणु भारत रे जो रिवाइवालिज्म टेंडेंसी तेणु प्रथम एलिमेंट मु कहली नियर इमिटेशन तेणु तुम जदि इंडियन मॉडर्न इंडियन पॉलिटिकल थॉट को आमे जदि क्लासिफाई करबा Am I audible? Audible ना? जाने क्यों अनम्यूट करो? Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, audible, ma'am. Audible, ma'am.
नहीं आ रहा तो कौन पूरी सुनते हैं मैंने सीखे
Yes, ma'am. Start करो लो.
हूँ जी चल मानो नहीं रखा तो बढ़िया है चल हेलो
Yes,
हेलो
ma'am.
am I
Start
audible
now.
हेलो हाँ स्टार्ट करती
Yes. Yes.
तेणु मॉडर्न इंडियन पॉलिटिकल थॉट सॉरी फॉर द डिस्ट्रप्शन तेणु मॉडर्न क्लासिकल पॉलिटिकल थॉट कहले मॉडर्न इंडियन पॉलिटिकल थॉट कहले ताको वी कैन डिवाइड इनटू 3 सेगमेंट्स नंबर 1 हैला इट इज ए फेज ऑफ इमिटेशन which was led by the moderate wing of the Congress, where they were inspired by the contribution of the British, जोड़ा already कुहा सरलेनी. But the second phase was led by the revivalists, those who wanted to revive the old values ओल्ड इंडियन क्लासिकल वैल्यू से कह जाउची इंडियन पॉलिटिकल थॉट जदि कहबो वेस्टर्न पॉलिटिकल थॉट पई सेकी वेरिएशन नहीं वेस्टर्न पॉलिटिकल थॉट रे वी कैन क्रॉस वेरिएशन जेटा कहा गला ग्रीक पीरियड रे ऑर्गेनिक सेकंड फेज रे कहा गला मेकानिस्टिक थर्ड फेज रे कहा गला आइडियलिस्टिक फोर्थ फेज रे कहा गला एनार्किस्ट भारत रे से वेरिएशन नहीं in one line you can say modern Indian political thought is characterized by a consistency କାହିଁକି ସେ consistency ରହିଛି କାରଣ there is a contribution of the revivalists those who wanted to cling to the old values of Indian classical political thought ତେଣୁ modern Indian political thought ଯେତେବେଳେ ତମେ ମାନେ ପଢୁଛ if you don't go to the classical political thought if you don't understand the contribution of the classical political thinker then modern Indian political thinking would not be complete so there is a continuity but continuity का same format में रही नहीं these classical values were modernized because of the influence of the British the British values which was spread by the moderate wing of the Congress which was again resisted by the revivalist wing. Revivalist wing led by Tilak, led by Aurobindo and Tilak, Aurobindo and Vivekananda. They were the pioneer of the revivalist wing, those who wanted to revive the old Indian values. But at the same time, because of the revivalist tendency of this group of people in Indian political thought, modern Indian political thought रे तमे गोटे नुआ जिंस देखुछ rise of Hindutva, which you can relate with the modern days. Rise of Hindutva and rise of Islamic political thought. तेणु तमर ए पेपर रे गोटे पेपर होची Hindu political thought and Islamic political thought. Hindu political thought because Tilak started reviving the old values and the Muslims were minorities. They were assisted by the British. So the Muslim League Party was formed, which ultimately which
ଭଏସ୍ କିଛି ଆସୁନି ମାନେ ଏପଟେ ନାଇଁ ନାଇଁ ଏ କ୍ଲାସରେ ଭଏସ୍ କିଛି ଆସୁନି ସେପଟୁ କଣ ପ୍ରୋବ୍ଲେମ୍
for the disruption. ତେଣୁ ଯେତେବେଳେ political ହଉଛି ଯେ ଦ୍ୱିତୀୟ ହଉଛି
Excuse me, madam. Excuse me, madam. Madam, your voice is breaking. Madam, voice ଟା break ହଉଛି. Madam, voice ଟା break ହଉଛି. Hello? Madam? हाँ, madam, ଟିକେ voice break ହଉଛି. Hello? madam, ଟିକେ voice break ହଉଛି ଟିକେ. Hello? madam, ଟିକେ voice break ହଉଛି. ଟିକେ voice break ହଉଛି, madam. Madam?
ହଁ ବର୍ଷା ବହୁତ ହଉଛି ଏଠି।
ଓ
ଏବେ
ବର୍ଷା
ଶୁଣା
ବର୍ଷା ହଉଛି
ଯାଉଛି?
ଆଚ୍ଛା ସେ ମୋବାଇଲ ଟା ଯୋଉଠି ହଁ ଭଏସ ବ୍ରେକ୍ ହଉଛି ତ
ହଁ ହଁ ସେ ଇଣ୍ଟରନେଟ ରେ
ହଁ
ପ୍ରୋବ୍ଲେମ
ଯୋଉଠି
ହେଲା ବୋଲି ଫୋନ ରେ କନେକ୍ଟ କଲି।
ହଁ
ଏବେ
ହଁ
ଆପଣଙ୍କୁ ଶୁଣା
ନାଇଁ
ଯାଉଛି କି?
ହଁ ଏବେ ଠିକ ଶୁଣା ହେଲା ଫୋନ ଟା ଯୋଉଠି ନେଟୱାର୍କ ଆସୁଛି ସେଇଠି ରଖିଦିଅନ୍ତୁ ନହେଲେ।
ହଁ 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 ନା ଏବେ ଆପଣଙ୍କୁ ମୋ ଭଏସ ଟା ଶୁଣାଗଲା କି?
ହଁ ଏବେ ଠିକ ଅଛି ମଝିରେ ଟିକେ ବ୍ରେକ୍ ହଉଥିଲା।
ହଁ ହଁ ହଁ
ହଁ
ତେଣୁ
ହଁ ହଁ ଓକେ
ମଡର୍ଣ୍ଣ ୱିଙ୍ଗ ର ସେକେଣ୍ଡ ଫେଜ ରେ ଯେତେବେଳେ ରିଭାଇଭାଲିଜମ ଆରମ୍ଭ ହେଇଛି during that revivalist phase ଆମେ ଦେଖୁଛୁ ଯେ ଇଣ୍ଡିଆନ ପଲିଟିକାଲ ଥଟ ରେ ଗୋଟେ ନୂଆ ନେଗେଟିଭ ବୋଲି କୁହାଯାଇପାରେ ମଡର୍ଣ୍ଣ ଇଣ୍ଡିଆନ ପଲିଟିକାଲ ଥଟ ରେ there was a rise of a negative tendency ଯୋଉଟାକୁ ବର୍ତ୍ତମାନ ଯୁଗରେ ଆମେ ତାକୁ କହୁଛୁ communal tendency. So a modern Indian political thought experienced the growth of communalism in the form of Hindutva and Islamic political thought. Earlier Islamic political thought was in a dormant form. It was led by Sayyid Ahmad Khan and Iqbal, but later on they became aggressive because of the birth of Hindutva. So revival, what was the drawback of the revivalism? Drawback of the revivalism है there was rise of Hindutva and rise of Islamic thought, which ultimately led to partition of the country, creation of Pakistan. Then the third phase of modern Indian political thought, it was a period led by synthesis. Synthesis, it was a period, the broad outline was synthesis, but it was led by Gandhi, Nehru, Patel, etc., to try to accommodate old values with the modern values. So during this period, constitutionalism, nationalism, all these things gained ground. So by the time India became independent, we have come across the, in true sense of the term, we have come across the birth of modern India. Now, my point is that here we will be missing if you do not mention the contribution of subaltern political thinkers. Subaltern political thinker means those who talk about the downtrodden. So subaltern political thinker, they talk about the peasant, they talk about the women, they talk about the unprivileged section of the society. So in Indian political thought, we have a section of the section who talk about this group of people, and it has enriched the dimension of Indian political thought. So in a broad sense of the term, modern political thought, modern Indian social political thought, imitation, then revivalism, then synthesis, and we will be wrong if you do not add the contribution of the subaltern school in our thought process. Am I clear or not? So if you, after going through this class, if you go through your book, you will find that there is a classical political thought first, then you will be coming across the, if you go through the book, you will come across the contribution of the social reformer, then there is contribution of the moderate wing, then there is contribution of extremists, then Hindu political thought, Islamic political thought, then Gandhi, Nehru, Ambedkar, and a small section is there who talked about the contribution of subaltern people. Because subaltern people means there are two group of people. Mainstream people means we refer to Gandhi, Nehru, what they talk about India, what they talk about state, what they talk about constitutionalism, nationalism. Subaltern people would talk about the contribution of the grassroots people for the growth of Indian nationalism. Because at that time there were a lot of peasant uprising, there were struggle for women, struggle led by women, those who contributed in spreading the message for against exploitation, maybe in the form of caste exploitation, peasant exploitation, or women exploitation. So, modern Indian political thought also includes that thing. Am I clear or not? You can raise me your doubts now. Please unmute your one by one. Am I clear or not? What I want to know actually whether students are getting my point or not. Somebody may
Ma'am,
unmute.
please,
Yes.
ma'am, please again the components of society, please.
Which page you want to listen?
Ma'am, from the beginning, the components of society.
Components of society.
Yes, ma'am.
Later join kalo ki?
Yes, ma'am.
Later join kalo?
Yes, ma'am. No, no. During that time, I am there, but somehow I am not understood those things.
Okay. Components
Okay,
of
ma'am.
society, components of classical political thought. Component of Parambar Kauti,
Yes,
classical
ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
political, yes. Classical political thought has a link with modern political thought. You might be having a doubt in your mind that why I am talking about classical political thought when the name of your paper is Modern Indian Social Political Thought. That's why I made a comparison between classic Indian political thought and Western political thought. In Western political thought, there are variations, but in Indian political thought, there is a continuity. ତେଣୁ classical political thought ଟା ଯଦି ନ ବୁଝିବ ତାହେଲେ modern political thought ବୁଝିବାଟା difficult ହେଇଯାଏ. ତାହେଲେ classical political thought ଟା କ'ଣ? Classical political thought talks about three things. During the period of Manu and Kautilya, classical political thought talks about three things. It is quite systematic. It talks about human nature. It believes that man always wants to have his inner growth. Man always focuses upon his own consciousness. His focus is upon growth of his own inner consciousness. ତେଣୁ ମଣିଷର ନେଚର କୁ କୁହାଯାଉଛି moral and divine because he wants only own inner growth, not at the cost of others. So classical political thought कହୁଛି man is not selfish, man is moral by nature. He wants to live and he allows others to live. এই context ରେ ତମେ ଯଦି compare କରିବ Western political thought ରେ ମଣିଷକୁ portray କରାହଉଛି ଯେ man is highly selfish by nature. ଏଇ ଯୋଉ version human nature ଅଛି ଏଇଟା ମନୁ କୌଟିଲ୍ୟ ଯାହା କହିଥିଲେ ତମେ ଦେଖିବ ଗାନ୍ଧୀର political thought ରେ ଯେତେବେଳେ ପଢିବ modern Indian political thought ମାନେ one of the most important thinkers of India is considered as Gandhi. Gandhi also believed that man is benign by character, man is moral, man is not selfish by nature. That's why I say there is a continuity. ତେଣୁ ପ୍ରଥମ element ହେଲା human nature. ଦ୍ୱିତୀୟ element ହେଉଛି society ର setup ଟା କିପରି ହେବ because man is a social being who lives in the society. Society ରେ ମଣିଷ କିପରି ଭାବରେ ବଞ୍ଚିବ ତେଣୁ ଦ୍ୱିତୀୟ element ରେ classical political thinker believe that society is plural. Society is divided into four groups: Brahmin, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Sudras. When they say that society had four groups, they did not believe that one caste used to exploit the other one. କାରଣ early Vedic period ରେ caste system ଟା hereditary ନଥିଲା. If I know the rituals, ମୁଁ ବ୍ରାହ୍ମଣ ହେବି. If I know the warfare, ମୁଁ କ୍ଷତ୍ରିୟ ହେବି. If I know the trade, I will be Vaishya. If I don't know anything, I will be Sudra. So society was divided into four groups on the basis of functions And when you are unable to do that function, you are likely to be changed to other group. ତେଣୁ କଣ ଜଣଙ୍କର ସ୍ଥାନ ସୁନିଶ୍ଚିତ ଗୋଟିଏ ଜାଗାରେ ନଥିଲା. So what was the purpose of designing the society into four groups? Classical Hindu political thinker କହିବେ ଯେ society କୁ ଯୋଉ ଚାରି ଭାଗରେ କରାଯାଇଥିଲା, କାରଣ ତମେ ଯୋଉ କାମ ଜାଣୁଛ ସେଇ କାମରେ ସେଇ ଜାଗାରେ ତମେ ଯଦି ରହିବ, then you can grow yourself, that will contribute in the growth of your inner consciousness. So society was plural and nobody was given a fixed place. ତୃତୀୟ ଜିନିଷ, they talked about the nature of the state. What would be the state? Now ଯେତେବେଳେ state ବୋଲି କୁହାଯାଉଛି, modern sense ର state କୁହାଯାଉ ନାହିଁ, କାରଣ ବର୍ତ୍ତମାନ ଯୁଗରେ when we talk about the state, it believes that an organization which must have territory, population, government, and the most essential element hଉଛି sovereignty, free from internal and external influence. এই ଫର୍ମେଟରେ ସେତେବେଳେ ଷ୍ଟେଟ୍ ନଥିଲା, sovereignty concept ନଥିଲା. କାହିଁକି ନଥିଲା? ତମମାନେ ମତେ ପ୍ରଶ୍ନ କରିପାରିବ ଯେ ରାଜାମାନେ ତ ଯୁଦ୍ଧ କରୁଥିଲେ, ରାଜାମାନେ କଣ sovereign ନଥିଲେ? ନାଇଁ, sovereign କେତେବେଳେ କହୁଛ? Sovereignty political science ର ଅର୍ଥ ହଉଛି ruler must be free from internal control and external control. That king was guided by the regulation called dharma. Dharma means king was asked to do one thing to maintain social plurality. ରାଜା absolute ନଥିଲେ, ଏକଛତ୍ରବାଦ ନଥିଲେ. ରାଜାଙ୍କର କାମ ଥିଲା ସୋସାଇଟିରେ ଯୋଉ ଚାରି ଭାଗରେ ଲୋକଙ୍କୁ ବିଭକ୍ତ କରାଯାଇଛି, so that they would grow in a perfect manner. ରାଜାଙ୍କର କାମ ହଉଛି to maintain that social plurality. If the king would fail in that job, king may not remain in his own place. That was the function. And if there was a deviation, the king was asked to give danda. So classical political thought was based on the twin principle called dharmaniti and dandaniti. So human nature was good, was moral, was divine, because he was searching his inner growth. He was not interested in material growth. Frijo, Sutaro, by esobo material being, he was not interested, or he was not supposed to be interested exactly. Second element होची सोसाइटी को प्लुराल कर दिया गला. स्टेट थोड़ा भी प्लुराल काहे की कुआउती? स्टेट गोटी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन नथिला. मनुष्यर ग्रोथ पाए मनुष्य डिपेंड करूतिला अन्य ग्रुप गुडा को ऊपर जो माने ताको सहाय्य करूतिले. जोटा मु कहली देयर वाज ए ग्रुप कॉल्ड ब्राह्मण, क्षत्रिय, वैश्य एंड शूद्र. क्षत्रिय रो लीडर था होतला राजा, ब्राह्मण रो काम गोटे भिन्न रहउतला. तो सोसाइटी वाज प्लुराल बाय नेचर. And third, state was limited. King was given a limited power. King was guided by religious scriptures or dharmaniti. So king was not sovereign. जो सेंस रा मेकियावेली कहला वेस्टर्न कंट्री रे king was absolutely powerful. Hobbes कहला Leviathan was absolutely powerful because he was not controlled by anything. So classical political thought रे एई तीनटा एलिमेंट रहिछि. एटा क्लासिकल एटा मॉडर्न काहे के कहा जाउ नाही? Because you may raise a question, why it is not modern? Because modern कहले तमे modern concept रो state नाही सी जगह रे. Modern sense रे right liberty नाही. Classical political thought was regulated by inequality, hierarchical social order, private property concept नाही. So justice, individual justice कथा नाही, legal system नाही, constitution नाही. तेणु ताको आमे कहूची क्लासिकल पॉलिटिकल थॉट. एई सब जिंस we came to know when the British came to India for their own purpose. सेति पई कहा जाउची मॉडर्न पॉलिटिकल थॉट रो कंटेक्स्ट होची colonization. जो colonization ब्रिटिश माने इनिशिएटेड करिथिले for their own growth, because in the west, because in England there was industrial revolution. There was large scale of production of goods. They needed market, so they came to India in search of market. They settled down India and they kept India as its colony. During that colonization process, when they stayed here for 300 years, they introduced different type of administrative measures. They introduced modernization in India, and we came to know about concept of right, concept of liberty, concept of individual justice, concept of legal system, concept of private property, and we fought against the British. So the concept of nationalism grew, and we came to know about concept of state. When we were fighting freedom struggle, we fought for constitution also. So the constitutionalism is a new angle which was added to modern political thought. So that's why I told that we had a classical political thought, but the British contributed in modernizing us. But if you conclude that Britishers were the sole one who modernized India, then it would be wrong. Because besides the British, during the freedom struggle, those who were exposed to Western education, there were three categories of people. Prathama Vargara Lokamane, they imitated the British, but they fought for the Indians also. ତେଣୁ ପ୍ରଥମ ଫେଜ୍ ଯେତେବେଳେ ମଡରେଟ୍ ୱିଙ୍ଗ କଥା ଚିନ୍ତା କରିବା, ଇଣ୍ଡିଆନ୍ ନ୍ୟାସନାଲ କଂଗ୍ରେସ 1885 ରେ ଏଷ୍ଟାବ୍ଲିଶ ହେଲା। ସେଇ ଲୋକମାନେ they who used to praise the British, but at the same time they fought for the Indians also. Then Indians must be associated in the process of administration. ତେଣୁ ଯୋଉ political awareness, political articulation ଯୋଉଟା essential for the growth of modern Indian political thought, ଏଇଟା ଆରମ୍ଭ ହେଲା ସେଇ phase of imitation ରେ। they exposed us to the concept of Western value, जोटा कि वर्तमान आमर संविधान रे लिखा है, जोटा आगुरु नथिला क्लासिकल पॉलिटिकल थॉट रे राइट लिबर्टी कथा आमर नथिला, इक्वालिटी कथा नथिला। वर्तमान आमे से सब जिंस जानिलु, बट सेकंड फेज को पुणी आस, they were not the sole one. सेकंड फेज को देखिलो रिवाइवलिस्ट, they wanted to go back to the old value. तो रिवाइवलिस्ट माने कहले इनर डोमेन इज सुपीरियर देन द आउटर डोमेन। ब्रिटिशर वैल्यू को जेतेबेले आमे देखुचु, we should not forget our old value. तेणु एई ग्रुप रो लोक माने क्लासिकल पॉलिटिकल थॉट को रिवाइव करेले ड्यूरिंग दैट प्रोसेस ऑफ colonization, that man is moral, society is plural, state should be limited by nature. एटा तिलक रो राइटिंग रे देखिबो, अरविंद रो राइटिंग रे देखिबो। So they revive, their contribution होची revival of the old values. तापरे तमे थर्ड ग्रुप को आसुचो, ए जो रिवाइवलिज्म हेची, रिवाइवलिज्म गोटे ग्रुप रो मनरे भय क्रिएट कला। कहारो तमे जेतेबेले हिंदू थॉट को बैक करूचो, भारत रे सेतेबेले आउ गोटे ग्रुप रो लोक थिले, से माने हेले मुस्लिम। इस्लामिक इन्वेजन हेतिला, भारत रे मुस्लिम माने थिले, and the British adopted the policy of divide and rule policy after the Sepoy Mutiny. So British supported the Muslims, and it led to the birth of Muslim League. So, and because of that Muslim League, Indian political thought, seteବେଳେ ଭାରତର ସେମାନେ part ଥିଲେ, Indian political thought gave birth to Islamic political thought and Hindu political thought. There was growth of Hindutva on the one hand, on the growth of Islamic political thought on the other. Then there is another section called synthesis. A synthesis of the third school which tried to blend both the European value and the old value. It was led by Nehru, by Patel, by Subhash Bose, and to some extent by Gandhi. And they said that it was not wrong to borrow the Western values like right, liberty, equality, justice, but at the same time, we must be in touch with our old values also. So they synthesize both the things. Modern Indian political thought, which grew in the background of colonization, had three phases, and all the three phases all together, they led to the growth of modern Indian political thought. Your modern Indian political thought, you come across the idea of nationalism, the idea of concept, the idea of parliament, the idea of election, all which were not there in the classical political thought. Am I clear? Am I clear? Who put the question? Who raised the question? Please come forward, unmute. Students, please unmute yourself. Those who want to raise question.
मैम स्लाइड है सुनाई.
Huh? Yes, tell me again. Please tell me again.
मैडम स्लाइड है सुनाई.
मैम स्लाइड
Pardon?
स्लाइड प्रोवाइड करके पे
स्लाइड.
Actually, I was not ready for the slide, but what are your problem? Tell me. I am ready to explain. One by one, you can raise your doubt me. Today, listen to me. This is the sketch. You have got one volume, MPSE-004. The first, I have been telling you about the first 3 chapters. Evolution of modern Indian political thought. What is political thought? What is modern Indian political thought? What is the link between classical political thought and modern political thought? What is that continuity? Why we say that there is a continuity between classical political thought and modern political thought? And who contributed? What is the contribution of the British for the growth of modern political thought? And how the Indians, there are first growth, role of the Europeans or the Britishers. Second role of the social reformers. Third role of the moderates. Fourth role of the revivalists. Fifth contribution of the Islamic political thinkers. Then sixth contribution of Hindutva for the Indian political thought. Sixth contribution of the constitutionalists. So I have divided into several segments. तेणु प्रथमटा होची क्लासिकल पॉलिटिकल थॉट. प्लीज नोट इट डाउन. फर्स्ट होची क्लासिकल. आई एम टेलिंग इट इन ए वेरी स्लो मैनर. Modern Indian political thought has its genesis in classical political thought. Genesis ro artha hochi root. Modern Indian social political thought ro root ta achi classical Hindu political thought re. कारण क्लासिकल पॉलिटिकल थॉट तीनोटी जिनिस कहूची. प्लीज नोट इट डाउन. वन, इट टॉक्स अबाउट ह्यूमन नेचर which should be selfless. Second, it talks about plural society divided into Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Sudra. Third, it talks about a state which might not be modern, but it must be limited by nature. State must be guided by harmony and dandanity. Am I clear or not? Please tell me. Is it clear? Is it clear or not?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, clear. So, modern Indian political thought has its genesis in classical politics. Bartaman Western political thought bhuli jao. Has its genesis in classical political thought. Now, kahaku ame modern कहू. Modern political thought ଯେତେବେଳେ ୟୁରୋପିଆନ ଲୋକମାନେ ଭାରତକୁ ଆସିଲେ, when the colonization began, ତାକୁ ଆମେ କହୁଛୁ modern political thought. So modern political thought began when India was under colonization. काहेकि knowingly, unknowingly, let it be for their own purposes, they introduced new things in India which were not there earlier in our country. They introduced structures like railway communication. They introduced English education. They made land reform. ये जो measures गुड़ाक जो नेले, it made us acquainted with modern political values like right, liberty, equality, justice. These concepts were not there earlier. So the British introduced these modern liberal values in India. Second, they helped in the unification of the country. And remember that unification design was done to serve their purpose, not our purpose. They wanted to exploit us. But during that process, they introduced very modern gadget, railway नथिला, communication नथिला, telegraph नथिला, introduce कले तांको पाई. But it helped us to be one. Press नथिला, press आसिला, news circulated, vernacular press आसिला, English education press जोड़ा, vernacular press आसिला, vernacular माने local language रे press आसिला. So it helped in the unification of the country, which led to birth of nationalism, which state political thought माने individual and state. Classical thought रे modern state नथिला. Modern state एपरि भावरे grow कला. तेणु modern state grow करिवार किए साहाय्य कला? The British introduced measures for their own purposes, but it helped India in creating the base for nationalism. The British took measures for themselves. It made us acquainted to modern political values. तमे जेतेबेले political thought पढ़ो, कौन पढ़ो thought रे? For example, to be very frank, तमे Plato विषय रे पढ़ुछो. Plato कौन कहिछि individual विषय रे? Plato कौन कहउछि state विषय रे? Plato equality विषय रे कौन कहउछि? बा Hobbes विषय रे पढ़िबो. State विषय रे कौन कहउछि? Resistance रहिबो कि नै, property रहिबो कि नै. तेणु पॉलिटिकल थॉट कहले तुम इंडिविजुअल स्टेट रो रिलेशन को बुझाओ. पॉलिटिकल थॉट कहले पॉलिटिकल वैल्यूज को बुझाओ. तेणु क्लासिकल पॉलिटिकल थॉट रे ए वैल्यूज नथिला, मॉडर्न स्टेट नथिला. तो क्लासिकल पॉलिटिकल थॉट रे कोन थिला? वी हैड बिनाइन ह्यूमन, सेल्फलेस ह्यूमन नेचर, हमर इंटरप्रिटेशन थिला. We had plural society, we had faith in limited state. एई तीनटा जिनिस नै करी आमे आरंभ करथिलु our journey. When the British came, for their benefit, they introduced certain changes. बारंबार मु कहि रोकछि for their own benefit. But सेई तांकर इंट्रोडक्शन बा हमकु काम कु देला. काहे कि because we came to know about the world about which we were ignorant. We came to know about right. कथा कहिबार अधिकार, इक्वालिटी रो अधिकार, रेजिस्ट करिबार अधिकार, एटा हम देशरे नथिला. प्रॉपर्टीगत अधिकार हम देशरे नथिला. We came to know about that. We came to know about the concept called state. हम जानिबा को पाइलु जे इलेक्शन बोली गोटे जिंसटे अछि. रिप्रेजेंटेटिव गवर्नमेंट हे पारे, संविधान ही पारे, constitutionalism. We had no about idea about all this. एटा ब्रिटिश माने while running our country for their own purposes introduced in our country. So that is the relevance, that is the contribution of the British in developing modern Indian political thought. But सेतिकिरे समाप्त हो नाही. जेतेबेले सेमाने से जिंस आरंभ कले, side by side they used to exploit also. So there was a group of people who resisted the British, whether it was Gandhi or Aurobindo or Vivekananda. We used to resist. We launched freedom struggle. 1857-1947 पर्यंत भारत रे फ्रीडम स्ट्रगल चलिला. सेई पीरियड रे we started growing, and that phase was divided into 3 parts. प्रथम फेज रे जो माने इमिटेट कले, से माने कहिले जे ब्रिटिश माने who came to India, they introduced modernization. Their contribution was immense, but Indians should be allowed to grow. एटा होची तांकर contribution. They fought for the Indians. They made us aware about the contribution of the British. द्वितीय स्कूल मॉडर्न पॉलिटिक्स रो प्रथम तीनटा चैप्टर रो समरी कहूची. द्वितीय चैप्टर रे देखिबो कंट्रीब्यूशन ऑफ द मॉडरेट. व्हाट द मॉडरेट्स डिड, Moderates made us aware of the British contribution. But side by side, they fought for the Indian. Then third came the revivalists. They revived the classical values. They did not like the contribution of the British. They wanted to go back to the early values that man is selfless. We wanted to have that value pattern. Then came the synthesizer. Those who wanted to blend, blend kale जे क्लासिकल वैल्यू सहित मॉडर्न वैल्यू को मिसा जाऊ कारण केवल क्लासिकल वैल्यू नहीं करी वर्तमान जुग रे 21st सेंचुरी रे तमे चलीबा असंभव बा 20th सेंचुरी रे तेणु ब्रिटिश वैल्यू को किपरि भावरे भारतीय मानकर क्लासिकल वैल्यू सहित मिसा जीवो सिंथेसाइज करा जीवो that was the contribution of the third school which was led by Ambedkar, which was led by Gandhi, Nehru, and Patel. They talked about the British element, they talked about classical value. And Chaturtha group किए हेले एमानकु कुहा जाउची subaltern group. तेणु भारतर पॉलिटिकल थॉट जेतेबेले पढुचो मॉडर्न इंडियन पॉलिटिकल थॉट आमे जेतेबेले पढुचे ताकू केते भागर भाग करा जीवो जे जेतिके भागरे भी भाग कले भी वी मस्ट रिमेंबर जे मॉडरेट गोटे ग्रुप हेले एक्सट्रीमिस्ट गोटे ग्रुप हेले हिंदुत्व गोटे ग्रुप हेले इस्लामिक गोटे ग्रुप हेले चारिटा ग्रुप हेले रिवाइवलिस्ट गोटे ग्रुप हेले पांचटा ग्रुप हेले कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनलिस्ट बा सिंथेसाइजर आ गोटे ग्रुप हेले आमे जदि 6 भागरे भी बा सबल्टन आ गोटे ग्रुप हेले 7 भागरे आमे जदि एते ब्रॉड जिंसटा को 7 भागरे करिबा तमे सेगमेंट वाइज चैप्टर देखिबो समस्ते किंतु क्लासिकल वैल्यूज को बेस करिकरी तांकर व्यू ताको कहउछथि whether it is a subaltern group whether it is constitutionalist whether it is revivalist whether it is the moderate प्रत्येक ग्रुप इस्लामिक ग्रुप बा हिंदुत्व ग्रुप प्रत्येक ग्रुप विश्वास करंती man is selfless second society should be plural I am using the word should be man is moral by nature society should be plural and state should be limited तेणु वर्तमान जुगरे तमे जदि थिंकर थारु आरंभ करिवो दयानंद सरस्वती थारु तमे जयप्रकाश नारायण को पर्यंत पढिबो तमे समस्त को देखिबो समस्त कहिबे state should not be powerful like leviathan because individual is benign state को टीचर को क्लासरूम रे केते बेले तमे चाहू टीचर should be extremely powerful जेते बेले छुआ माने बदमाश आमे कहूची टीचर should be given excessive power but मु जदि भाबिबी मोर क्लास रो छुआ माने matured enough then why should I exercise so much of pressure and force this is the viewpoint of Indian political thinkers from Dayananda Saraswati to Jayaprakash Narayan that man knows his limit प्रत्येक मनुष्य सेल्फिश नुहे से तार लिमिट जानि ते गोटे प्लुराल सोसाइटी रे रहू तेणु स्टेट शुड बी लिमिटेड तेणु जेतेबेले क्लासिकल पीरियड रे स्टेट कहउतले स्टेट लिमिटेड कहउतले माने केतेबेले राजा थे वर्तमान नेहरू जेतेबेले कहबे स्टेट लिमिटेड आमे मॉडर्न स्टेट रो आख्या दउछु संविधान रहिबो प्राइम मिनिस्टर रहिबे प्रेसिडेंट रहिबे एंड दे शुड बी कंट्रोल्ड बाय द कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन दैट इज कॉल्ड डेमोक्रेसी so states should be limited states should be limited बोली आगरू कहउतले मनु कहला सप्तांग थ्योरी स्टेट should be limited वर्तमान नेहरू कहबे स्टेट should be limited constitution should be there judiciary should be there to regulate the Modi government or to regulate the government of Navin government am I clear or not so there is a continuity तमे जदि ताको वेस्टर्न पॉलिटिकल थॉट रे देखिबो वेस्टर्न पॉलिटिकल थॉट रे ऑर्गेनिक ट्रेडिशन कहउची इंडिविजुअल पावरफुल नुह एनार्किस्ट ट्रेडिशन कहउची माने मेकानिस्टिक ट्रेडिशन कहउची इंडिविजुअल इज पावरफुल आइडियलिस्टिक ट्रेडिशन कहउची स्टेट इज पावरफुल एनार्किस्ट ट्रेडिशन कहउची सोसाइटी पावरफुल समस्त भिन्न भिन्न कथा कहउछन so there is no continuity there is repeated revision of the western political thought भारत को जेते बेले आसुच भारत रे देखते गोटी कंटिन्यूटी आरंभ रु शेष पर्यंत कुहा जाउची man is selfless. सोसाइटी रे प्लुराल जातिगत भाव रे तमे जो कहउछ सोसाइटी स्टेट बिना भी सिविल सोसाइटी रहिबा कथा स्टेट शुड हैव ए लिमिटेड स्पेस तेणु वर्तमान भी स्टेट शुड बी लिमिटेड बोली कुहा जाय बुझियला मु जाय कहली नाउ डाउट रहला तेणु जो क्लासिकल पॉलिटिकल थॉट कहउछ वर्तमान तमे देखो ओरिएंटलिस्ट मानकु देखो न्यू गांधी स्कूल लोक देख बर्तमान भी इवन 21st सेंचुरी रे गांधीयन व्यूटा रिवाइव करा होची ओरिएंटल स्कूल आसी जाउची दे टॉक अबाउट द क्लासिकल हिंदू वैल्यू तेणु भारत रे वेस्टर्न वैल्यूज आसिला परे भी वी हैव मैनेज टू सिंथेसाइज मिक्स ऑफ वेस्टर्न वैल्यूज सहित आमे ओल्ड वैल्यूज को मिक्स करी वी हैव बिकम रिचर आमे रिच होचू वी हैव एनरिच्ड आवरसेल्फ निजर ओल्ड वैल्यूज को छाड़ी ना हो बट एट द सेम टाइम वेस्टर्न वैल्यूज को मिसई करी वी हैव लर्न टू ग्रो अहेड मार्च अहेड so thereby Indian political thought has become mature. Savita, is it clear? Savita?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Anybody else? Jagdish boy? Any doubt? Please tell me if you have.
No, ma'am, it's clear.
Is it clear ना? तमे आज तीनटा चैप्टर का समरी हो तेणु इट शुड बी
Yes,
क्लियर
ma'am.
बारंबार तमे जहार भी ग्रेजुएशन रे पॉलिटिकल साइंस नाही जेतेबेले पॉलिटिकल थॉट पढिबो देयर आर सेवरल टाइप ऑफ पॉलिटिकल थॉट वेस्टर्न पॉलिटिकल थॉट ओरिएंटल पॉलिटिकल थॉट अंडर रे आसुची इंडियन पॉलिटिकल थॉट इस्लामिक पॉलिटिकल थॉट चाइनीज पॉलिटिकल थॉट now we are talking about Indian political thought. You must have a doubt in your mind why madam is repeatedly referring to Western political thought. Because Indian political thought, but modern Indian political thought has grown on the basis of Western political thought. आमे Chinese political thought को refer करना हो, बा refer करा जाए नहीं, बा Islamic political thought जोटा Middle East रे होती, ताकू तार influence रे Indian modern Indian political thought grow करना. Modern Indian political thought grow करिछि in the context of Western political thought. काहे कि contact ता होछि colonization. जदि आमे colony हेइकरी रही नथान्ते ताहेले हुए तो आमर political thought रो character गोटे भिन्न मोड़ नहीं थांता. Because आमे colonize हेइकरी 300 वर्ष धरि रहिलु सेई 300 वर्ष भितरे सेमाने हमकु कोन देले एवं आमे सेमानकु रेजिस्ट करिबा प्रोसेस रे व्हाट वी हैव लर्न एवं सेमानको व्यू एवं आमो व्यू को मिसेई करी हाउ वी हैव ग्रोन तेनो जेतेबेले थॉट कहउछो सबबेले मन रख थॉट टॉक्स अबाउट रिलेशनशिप बिटवीन इंडिविजुअल एंड स्टेट जेतेबेले इंडिविजुअल स्टेट रो रिलेशनशिप से कहे इट टॉक्स अबाउट द पॉलिटिकल वैल्यूज जेतेबेले इंडिविजुअल स्टेट प्रत्येक पॉलिटिकल थॉट टॉक्स अबाउट पॉलिटिकल वैल्यूज लाइक राइट लिबर्टी इक्वालिटी जस्टिस एंड पॉलिटिकल ओब्लिगेशन ए पांचटा होची पॉलिटिकल वैल्यू राइट लिबर्टी इक्वालिटी जस्टिस एंड पॉलिटिकल ओब्लिगेशन एमानकु नेइकरी पॉलिटिकल थॉट को व्याख्या करा जाए तेणु प्लाटो को देखो कार्ल मार्क्स को देखो हॉब्स को देखो मैकियावेली को देखो समस्ते से भीतर को तमे जतले पसिबो you find relationship between individual and state, role of the individual and responsibility of the state. मनुष्यर दायित्व बोध कौन एवं स्टेट रो रेस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी कौन मनुष्यर कर्तव्य स्टेट रो रेस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी so political thought revolves around two concepts role of the individual and responsibility of the state ए जिंस को जेतेबेले फर्दर तमे एक्सपांड करो you come across political values like right, liberty, equality, justice and political obligation. Western political thought रे आमे देखुछु थिंकर माने याकु जेतबे व्याख्या करिसेंते भिन्न भाबरे व्याख्या करिसेंते किए स्टेट को सपोर्ट करूछि किए सोसाइटी को सपोर्ट करूछि किए इंडिविजुअल को सपोर्ट जे प्रथम ऑर्गेनिक ट्रेडिशन सेतेबेले स्टेट आसी नथिला ग्रीक पीरियड रे सेमाने सिटी स्टेट को सपोर्ट कर मॉडर्न पीरियड आसिला स्टेट आसिला सेतेबेले इंडिविजुअल को सपोर्ट करे ताकू मेकानिस्टिक ट्रेडिशन कहा गला तापरे रुसो और हिगल स्टेट को सपोर्ट कले अगेन ताकू कहा गला आइडियलिस्टिक ट्रेडिशन कार्ल मार्क्स कहला एनार्किस्ट ट्रेडिशन तेणु तम मन जो प्रश्न उठिबारे एते वेरिएशन वेस्ट रे काहे मु तार उत्तर भी देबी वेस्ट रे एते वेरिएशन होबार अर्थ होची तमे केतेबेले वेरिएशन करिवो जेतेबेले तमर चिंता शक्ति अछि जेतेबेले तमे रेजिस्ट करिवार आर्ट जानुछ तेणु वेस्टर्न सोसाइटी रे प्रथमे रेनासा मूवमेंट हला कंसिलियर मूवमेंट हला देन लोक मोनार्की लोक माने रेजिस्ट करिवाटा शिखिबे तापरे सेमानकु जेतेबेले एब्सोल्यूटिज्म अंडर रे चापी करी रखा गला लोक माने रेजिस्ट करिवार सुहाटा आहुरी बढ़िला सेठी सिविल सोसाइटी रहिला लोक माने स्पेस पाइले रेजिस्ट करिवा लागि रेजिस्ट करिवा पाइन अर्थ होची दे गॉट ए स्पेस टू आर्टिकुलेट टू एक्सप्रेस देयर व्यू रिगार्डिंग इंडिविजुअल स्टेट रिलेशन भारत रे सेटा हेई नाही काहे कि प्रथम जिनिस होची मैन इज मोरा एटा को लेखि रखो भारत रे वेरिएशन काहे कि नाही नंबर 1 man is considered to be benign selfless man is considered to be compliant द्वितीय मनीष कुहा जाउची से ऑर्डर कैरी आउट करिवो चाइनीज पॉलिटिकल थॉट के इन्फ्लुएंस रहउची man is compliant by nature मनीष भाबे जहा पाउची it has been the destiny कर्म मनीष भाग्य रे विश्वास करे तेणु मनीष रेजिस्ट करिवार विश्वास करे ना इंडियन पॉलिटिकल थॉट रे तेणु 1 man is benign सेकंड होची man is compliant by nature कर्तव्य परायण मानि चले से कन्फ्यूशियस ट्रेडिशन तक कहा जाए तृतीय man is living in a plural society जो कि ताकू रेजिस्ट करिवार आवश्यकता पड़ुना चतुर्थ state is never allowed to be absolute तेणु से कहा को रेजिस्ट करिवो state is never allowed to be absolute then civil society एटी एते मात्रा रे ना तेणु मनीष एटी रेजिस्ट करि नाही इन इंडियन पॉलिटिकल थॉट रे वेरिएशन पाइबो नाही देयर इज ए कंटिन्यूटी काहे के वेरिएशन नाही नंबर 1 man is selfless second man is compliant third man is living in a plural society fourth state is limited by nature in other words state is not allowed to be assertive तेणु मनीष को आवश्यकता पड़ी ना रेजिस्ट करवा लगे तुम जिते विद्रोह न हो तुम नुआ आइडिया आसे ना वेस्ट देख फ्रेंच रिवॉल्यूशन है अमेरिकन वार ऑफ इंडिपेंडेंस है रेनासा मूवमेंट है से रेजिस्टेंस फलटा जी भी जहाँ चुकेवा भी पड़ो किंतु रेजिस्टेंस हेले तुम नुआ आइडिया आसे भारत रे से रेजिस्टेंस रो स्कोप नाही आसी ना तेणु जो क्लासिकल पॉलिटिकल थॉट तीनटा एजम्पशन नहीं आरंभ है देन मनीष सेल्फलेस सोसाइटी प्लूराल स्टेट लिमिटेड सेटा गड़ी चलीला रेदर सेटा डिक्लाइन टिके करिगला केतेबेले डिक्लाइन कला when we came across the late Vedic period जेतेबेले कि आइडल वर्शिप आसिला ब्राह्मण डोमिनेंस बढ़िला दलित कॉन्सेप्ट आसिला कास्ट सिस्टम टाको रिजिड कर दिया गला ब्राह्मण छुआ ब्राह्मण हम बोली लेट वैदिक पीरियड रे कहा गला दलित कॉन्सेप्ट आसिला तेणु एई पीरियड रे क्लासिकल पॉलिटिकल ट्रेडिशन द डिक्लाइन हैला तार फर्दर डिक्लाइन केतेबेले हैला when the Islamic people invaded कारण इस्लामिक पीपुल सेंट्रलाइजेशन रे विश्वास कले जो स्टेट ता लेस पावरफुल थिला इस्लामिक पीरियड रे बाबर अकबर टाइम रे स्टेट पावरफुल हे गला तेणु जेतेबेले स्टेट पावरफुल हे जाए मनुष्यर अधिकार ता कमी जाए तेणु क्लासिकल पॉलिटिकल थॉट रे डिक्लाइन हैला ए पीरियड मॉडर्न पॉलिटिकल थॉट आरंभ हैला कॉलोनाइजेशन कॉन्टेक्स्ट रे जेतेबेले ब्रिटिश माने इंडस्ट्रियल रिवॉल्यूशन हैला बेले मार्केट सर्च रे भारत को आसे दे डिड नॉट कम टू इंडिया फॉर ए ट्रिप विजिटिंग ट्रिप पाई आस्ता थिले सेठी जेतु जिनिस प्रोड्यूस हला इंडस्ट्री हला they wanted a market, and India provided that lucrative market. So they came as a merchant, they as a trader, and they settled down India. 300 ବର୍ଷ ଧରି ଯେତେବେଳେ ଭାରତରେ ରହିଲେ, they spread their own values knowingly, unknowingly. ଜାଣତରେ ଅଜାଣତରେ ତାଙ୍କର ଚିନ୍ତାଧାରା ଭାରତରେ ସ୍ପ୍ରେଡ ହବାରେ ଲାଗିଲା। ଦ୍ୱିତୀୟତଃ ଯେତେବେଳେ ସେମାନେ ଭାରତରେ ରହିଲେ, they introduced certain things for their own benefit. ସେଗୁଡାକ କଣ ହେଲା, ଯୋଉଟା ମୁଁ କହିଲି, English education, land reform, bureaucracy, police service, legal system, all these things they introduced for their benefit. But those things help us to be acquainted, to be exposed to a modern world. Because at the time India was not modern. Indian state ta modern state नथिला. Territory, population, government sovereignty होची modern state रा आख्या. भारतरे modern state नथिला. ଭାରତରେ right ନଥିଲା। ତେଣୁ modern Indian political thought, classical political thought ରେ continuity ତ ଜାଣିଲ, difference କଣ? Modern Indian political thought is known for its nationalism. Modern Indian political thought is known for the concept of right which has been articulated by the people while fighting against the British. Be it Tilak, be it Gandhi, be it Subhash Bose, be it Ambedkar. Equality କଥା articulated ହେଲା କେତେବେଳେ, ଯେତେବେଳେ ଭାରତରେ ବ୍ରିଟିଶ ମାନଙ୍କ against ଲଢିଲା ବେଳେ, they talked about equality, they talked about constitution, they talked about property. So while the context was colonization, colonization ରୁ ଆସିଲା freedom struggle. ତେଣୁ ଆମେ ଦୁଇଟା ଜିନିଷକୁ ଆଖି ଆଗରେ ରଖିବା। Indian political thought ଆଗରେ ଦୁଇଟା ଜିନିଷ ଅଛି। ଗୋଟିଏ colonization, ଯୋଉ colonization ଯୋଉକି freedom struggle ର ଜନ୍ମ ନେଲା। ଏଇ ପ୍ରୋସେସ ରେ ରାମମୋହନ ରୟ ଠୁ ଆରମ୍ଭ କରି ଜୟପ୍ରକାଶ ନାରାୟଣ ପର୍ଯ୍ୟନ୍ତ different ଲୋକମାନେ they have contributed in articulating individual state relationship, in defining role of the individual and responsibility of the state. While doing so, they try to maintain the old values and add the Western value in a beautiful manner. They have blended it. Some of them blended it. Hindutva blended kari nahi. Islamic thought blended kari nahi. Who blended it? The advocate of the constitutionalism. They try to blend, try to assimilate, try to synthesize old Indian values with Western values, and thereby Indian political thought has grown mature. But there is a negative point also. Negative point होची growth of communalism. ଯେତେବେଳେ revivalist tendency ହିନ୍ଦୁତ୍ୱ କୁ support କଲା, Islamic tendency develop kala, this is a dark point, that you can say it is a negative point in the articulation of Indian political thought, that is called communalism. ତେଣୁ ତମେ ଦେଖିବ ବର୍ତ୍ତମାନ ଏ ଯୋଉ ତିନିଟା ଚ୍ୟାପ୍ଟର କରିବି କରଲା ପରେ ତମେ ଦେଖିବ next chapter, this is your background ପରେ ଆସିବ contribution of moderate, contribution of extremist, contribution of your Mahatma Gandhi, contribution of Nehru, contribution of Ambedkar, contribution of subaltern thinker. Those who talked about peasant, those who talked about women, those who talked about the Dalit. What is their contribution in defining individual state relationship, in sticking to the old value that man is moral, society is plural, state is limited? ତାଙ୍କର contribution କଣ, ଗାନ୍ଧୀଙ୍କର contribution କଣ? ତମେ ଦେଖିବ ସମସ୍ତେ ଏ ତିନିଟା ଭିଉକୁ ଷ୍ଟିକ୍ କରିକିରି they have tried to elaborate the thought process of Indian ideas. Clear ହେଲା ବର୍ତ୍ତମାନ ନା ଆଉ କଣ doubt ରହିଲା? Yes, you can raise me your doubt. Jagdish boy, is it clear?
Clear, ma'am.
Then
Clear,
Clear,
anybody,
ma'am.
okay, anybody else कौन doubt रखिଛ chat box रे କୁହ ମତେ. I am ready to handle your question.
Clear, ma'am. Continue.
ଆଉ କାହାର doubt ନାହିଁ? Is there any doubt? ବର୍ତ୍ତମାନ ତମର ମୁଁ ବର୍ତ୍ତମାନ କଣ ପଢେଇଲି? ବର୍ତ୍ତମାନ ମୁଁ ତମର ତିନିଟା chapter cover କଲି. Okay? I have covered the first three elements. by giving a sketch. I have covered the first three chapters. Now it is our job to cover those three elements. देखो मॉडर्न ये जो एमपीएससी 4 रे प्रथम 3टा चैप्टर ही डिफिकल्ट चैप्टर. If you have digested these 3 chapters, then it will be damn easy on your part to move forward. Whatever question you will get, you will find it is very difficult to articulate while writing. Question from these first 3 chapters will be really tough because MPSC 4 difficult part होची एटा. तेणु सबु बेले मन रखो what is classical political thought, why modern political thought began, how it has grown, what is the difference between modern political thought with classical political thought, and what is the contribution of the British, what is the contribution of the Indian of different category. Indian मान को चौलागो करा गला. ये जो 6 भागरे Indian freedom fight, Indian मान को 6 भागरे करा गला. These 6 groups of Indians, while fighting against the British, how they have articulated individual state relationship, how they have defined the concept of right, concept of liberty, concept of equality. That is important. समझ गांधी नेहरू को लाइफ स्केच लिखिबा लगी you are not expected. You are expected to write political ideas of these people. Political idea means you have to focus what they have told about individual, what they have, individual means individual the right, liberty, equality. What they have told about the role of the state, whether they are talking about a minimal state, less powerful state, or they are talking about maximal state, whether they are talking about democracy, whether they are talking about election. These are the political ideas which you need to expand. तेणु प्रथमे जेतिकी लाइफ स्केच दिया हेतबो, लाइफ स्केच शुड बी पुट टू इन पेरिफेरी. लाइफ स्केच रो रोल टा इंपोर्टेंट नुह. कहार पुओ कहार झियो दैट इज नॉट इंपोर्टेंट. व्हाट इज इंपोर्टेंट, व्हाट दे हैव एनालाइज इंडिविजुअल स्टेट रिलेशनशिप जहा को हम पॉलिटिकल थॉट को. जदि पावरफुल स्टेट कहउचंती कि लेस पावरफुल स्टेट कहउचंती कि whether they are talking about constitution or not, what is their contribution to the growth of Indian nationalism. कारण Indian nationalism रो growth होला बोली Indian state आसिला. Indian state आसिला बोली political thought रो main pillar आसिला. Political thought revolves around the concept of state which has grown in between 1857 to 1947. Everybody has put their bit. Moderate, extremist, revivalist, or the Islamic, or the Hindutva, or the constitutionalist, or the subaltern. Everybody has put their bit in making the country free, in developing it into a state. So what is their perception about the state? And while talking about the state, obviously the other role comes. What is the role of the individual? How the individual will be protected? Whether there should be civil society or not. All these things come into the picture. Okay? Any doubt? What you have given in your chat box? What question? Because I am handling it now through mobile. Tell me any question. There is somebody called Brahmesh Sahu. Any question? Brahmesh Sahu, Vyasadev Pradhan, Chinmayi Bhatta, Jenny. No questions.
Ma'am, clarify the inner and outer domains.
Oh, good. He has put me a very good question. Inner domain and outer domain. This was told by the revivalists. Outer domain refers to outer growth of the individual. That means you will buy a car, you have grown. You want to have a AC, that means you have grown externally. Outer domain means materialism. Western political thought believes in material growth. If you go through Hobbes, Locke, Rousseau, their idea is called theory of possessive individualism. individual and property. So Western political thought, except Karl Marx, they believe in property. ତେଣୁ ତାଙ୍କୁ କୁହାଯାଏ materialistic thought. Indian political thought ku kuhajaye spiritualistic because they believe in inner growth. ତେଣୁ ଗୋଟେ ହଉଛି outer domain ମାନେ materialism, ଗୋଟେ ହଉଛି inner domain ମାନେ ହଉଛି spiritualism. Now ଯେତେବେଳେ ବ୍ରିଟିଶ ମାନେ ଭାରତକୁ ଆସିଲେ, ତମେ imagine କର first full moderate wing of the Congress ଯେତେବେଳେ establish ହେଲା 1885 ରେ, it was led by the moderate group. They said that the British had introduced so many things. We have grown actually. We have grown scientifically. We have grown. We have become more civilized. That was the version of the moderate way. It was challenged by the revivalists. They told we might have grown externally, but not internally. Because earlier, long back, Indian people relied upon early Vedic civilization, where focus was on inner growth of the individual, inner domain of the individual. So Indians were not lagging behind England. England was claiming itself superior because it was materially advanced. But that society was divided into two houses, rich and poor. Rich was exploiting the poor in England. So that society was not a true society or a healthy society. According to the revivalists, Indian society, which was there earlier, which was known for its inner growth, which later on declined, should be given priority. Indians were not inferior to the Western people because Indians were emphasizing upon inner growth. As long as you are not putting focus upon inner growth, as long as you are not getting mental peace, you are not thinking about the people living around you. So that society is not a true society. So revivalists criticize the Western civilization. In fact, if you will read Gandhi also talked about the spiritual growth of the individual. When he talked about Ram Rajya, he talked about Sarvodaya, he talked about inner growth of the individual, not about the scientific materialism or industrialization. So one is inner domain, other one was outer domain. This was told by the revivalists. While emphasizing upon Indian civilization, while saying that Indian civilization is no less than Western civilization, they said inner domain can be called superior to the outer domain. Clear? এটা তোমার বইরে লেখা হয়েছে সেকেন্ড চ্যাপ্টারে লিখিব ইনার ডোমেন আউটার ডোমেন আছে এটা
Yes, ma'am.
Anybody else? Any doubt? If you will not raise me your doubts, then how can I know? Pooja Behra, and then Rachna Prasad, Ranjan Kumar, Sabita Chaudhary, Sonam Singh, so many people are there. Sabita Chaudhary has already raised me a doubt. Satyabrata Sahu, Shivani Mahapatra. Look, problem is it is not a physical mode. In a physical mode, we interact with our students. But now, you have mute and I do not see your face. You might be looking at me. So how to know whether you are, when I see my students, when I see their spark in their eyes, I know that whether they have understood or not. Now the only medium is that you must raise your question so that I can at least feel that you have got my point. No questions? So should we wind up now?
Yes, madam.
We will wind up.
Yes, madam. I think there is no more question.
They are not raising their doubt. That is the problem.
They
should be
are not
frank
raising the
enough.
doubts. Okay, I think they are clear enough.
No, not exactly. Actually, MPSE-4 ର ପ୍ରଥମ 3ଟା chapter is quite tough. That's why I try to present things in a lucid manner as far as possible. Sometimes I try to explain them in Odia also. So I believe that they should get it. But if not, they can raise me their doubt in the next class also, which is day after tomorrow. I am giving the students that option also. They should go through, and before initiating my class, they can raise me doubt in that class also.
Yes, madam. So I think all are happy. All have enjoyed the class.
They should
I
tell me
have
that thing
forgotten
also.
to. Sorry, I have forgotten to introduce the counselor. The present counselor is the professor of political science in GM University. So you all are lucky. We all are lucky that we have got such a renowned person. So thank you very much.
But
Thank you, madam.
I don't like one thing when the student do not put question.
Oh,
Next
they
time,
will good.
next time you should come ready. You must
Yeah.
go through the first 3 chapters and raise your doubt.
All are requested to go through the materials that I have shared the link. You can download the materials from the link and go through the material before coming to the class. That will be better.
You go through and raise your doubt. It may not be your question. You must clarify your doubt. What is the purpose of taking class then? You not clarify.
No, you can ask your question. You can ask your question in English or in Odia. It's not a problem. So feel free.
You should feel free. That's why I am explaining in Odia. If you are comfortable in Odia, you can raise me your question in Odia also.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
Students, if you have any question, you can ask also in Odia. Or all are ready.
Some people, they don't have any doubt.
They don't have any doubt.
But you must go through. You must go through the first 3 chapters. I am repeatedly saying these first 3 chapters are very difficult. Very difficult. You must go through and ask me if you are clear, then it's okay. Otherwise, you are free to raise question in the next class also.
Okay.
Thank you,
I
sir.
think no more question is there. So now it is time to wind up. Okay. Thank you, madam. Thank you,
sir.
for conducting a nice session. Thank you, dear learners. Thank you all.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.